The glass door slammed shut. Every head in the boardroom turned. Amara Johnson felt her chest constrict as 12 executives stared at her with varying degrees of contempt, curiosity, and cold calculation. The afternoon sun sliced through the floor-to-ceiling windows of HanSeong Group headquarters, casting sharp shadows across the polished mahogany table. Chairman Park adjusted his tie, his silver cufflinks catching the light. He leaned forward slowly, deliberately, like a judge about to deliver a sentence. "Director Lee," he said, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "Are the rumors true?" Min-Jae sat 3 seats away from Amara. His posture was rigid, his hands folded neatly on the table, his expression carved from stone. He didn't look at her, didn't look at anyone, just stared at the grain in the wood as if it contained answers to questions he'd spent a lifetime asking. Amara's heartbeat thundered in her ears. The silence felt alive, suffocating, wrapping around her throat like invisible hands. She wanted to scream, to stand up and tell them everything, but her voice had abandoned her. "They said silence protects you," she thought, her fingers digging into the leather armrests. "But sometimes, silence betrays you." Chairman Park's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his jaw tightening. "We'll reconvene in 30 minutes. Director Lee, Miss Johnson, you will remain available." His tone made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. The executives filed out like a jury heading to deliberation, their whispers filling the space with poison. The door clicked shut, and suddenly Amara and Min-Jae were alone in the cavernous room with its glass walls and expensive art and suffocating pressure. Neither moved. Neither spoke. The city sprawled beyond the windows, Seoul in all its afternoon glory. Millions of people living their lives, completely unaware of the small tragedy unfolding on the 42nd floor. Amara finally broke. "Say something," she whispered. Min-Jae's jaw tightened. "Not here." "Then where?" Her voice cracked.
"When?"
"They're destroying us and you're just—" "I know what I'm doing," he said, his tone flat, controlled. But his hands, resting on the table, trembled slightly. Amara wanted to reach across the space between them, wanted to grab those trembling hands and remind him they were human. But she couldn't. Not anymore. Not after everything. "This isn't how it was supposed to end," she said quietly. Min-Jae finally looked at her. His eyes were dark, exhausted, holding 100 things he would never say. "It hasn't ended yet. If this story already has your heart dizzy, like, share, and subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your journey with Amara begins here, and you'll want to see where it leads." 3 months earlier, Amara had stepped off the plane at Incheon International Airport with 2 suitcases, a translator's certificate, and a promise to her mother that everything would be okay. Seoul had gleamed in the distance like something from a movie, all glass towers and neon lights, so impossibly different from Lagos where she'd spent her entire life. Her father had died 2 years before. Cancer that spread faster than the doctors could chase it. He'd been a university professor, brilliant and kind, loved by everyone who knew him. But professors in Lagos didn't leave much behind except books, memories, and debt. Amara had become the breadwinner overnight. 23 years old, fresh out of university, suddenly responsible for her mother and 2 younger brothers. The HanSeong Group job offer had arrived like a miracle. International Translation Department, competitive salary, relocation assistance. She'd accepted before reading the fine print, before understanding what it meant to be the only Black woman in a building full of people who looked right through her. Her first day, she'd arrived at 7:30 in the morning. The office was already half full. Seoul, she quickly learned, measured dedication in hours before sunrise. "You must be the new translator," a woman said, not unkindly, as Amara found her desk. "From Nigeria?" "Lagos, yes." Amara smiled, hoping it looked confident. "Interesting." The woman returned to her screen. That word, interesting, follows Amara like a shadow. Interesting outfit. Interesting accent. Interesting hair. Always interesting, never quite belonging. She buried herself in work. Korean to English, English to Korean, sometimes Chinese when the legal team needed help. She caught errors other translators missed, stayed late to verify terminology, sent midnight emails to clarify ambiguous phrases. Nobody noticed. Or if they did, they didn't care. Until the investor presentation. The conference room was packed, HanSeong executives on one side, Japanese investors on the other, translators in the back taking notes. Amara had prepared the presentation slides, translating the CEO's speech into polished English. But as he began speaking, she noticed something wrong. Slide 12 used the phrase, aggressive expansion strategy. In English, it sounded ambitious. But to Japanese business sensibilities, aggressive implied hostility, disrespect. She watched the investors' faces tighten, saw the subtle shift in body language that meant offense taken. Her pulse quickened. Her supervisor was scrolling through his phone. The other translators hadn't caught it. Standing quickly, she walked to the CEO's assistant and whispered urgently in Korean. The assistant's eyes widened. She nodded, passing a note forward. The CEO paused mid-sentence, glanced at the note, then at Amara. For a terrible moment, she thought she'd destroyed her career on day 12. Then he smiled slightly and adjusted his wording. Steady expansion strategy, he said in careful English. The investors relaxed. The presentation continued smoothly. Afterward, as people filed out, a voice behind her said, "Who changed slide 12?" Amara turned. Director Lee Min-Jae stood there, early 30s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. She'd seen him in the halls, but never spoken to him. He was untouchable, the youngest director in company history, rumored to work 20-hour days and never smile. "I did, sir," Amara said, straightening her spine. The original phrasing was too forceful for the cultural context. "You were right." He studied her for a moment, as if recalculating an equation. "What's your name?" "Amara Johnson, the translator from Lagos." "Yes, sir." "Good instinct, Miss Johnson." He nodded once and walked away, leaving her standing in the empty conference room wondering what had just happened. It wasn't praise, exactly, but it was acknowledgement. And in the HanSeong group, acknowledgement from director Lee was rarer than gold. In Lagos, survival was noise. Amara thought later that night, sitting in her tiny apartment eating instant ramen. In Seoul, it was silence. The late nights started by accident. Amara stayed because she had nowhere else to go. Her apartment in Itaewon felt empty and expensive. Every one spent on rent was a one she couldn't send home to Lagos. Her mother needed medication. Her brothers needed school fees. So she worked late, volunteered for extra projects, anything to prove she was worth keeping. Min-Jae stayed late because he always had. Nobody knew why. Some said he was obsessed with perfection. Others whispered he had no life outside work. Amara suspected something lonelier, someone running from something he couldn't name. She noticed him one night around 11, still at his desk, tie loosened, reading financial reports with the intensity of a man searching for buried secrets. She'd been finalizing translations for a merger document, her eyes burning from too many hours staring at screens. When she stood to leave, she passed his office. The door was open. "Still working, Miss Johnson?" His voice startled her. "Just finishing, sir." He glanced at his watch. "It's late." "Yes, sir." "Coffee?" She blinked.
"Sorry."
"There's a vending machine on the 12th floor. The one on this floor is broken." He stood, grabbing his jacket. "I need coffee. You look like you do too." It wasn't an order or an invitation, just a statement of fact. Amara followed him to the elevator, uncertain what else to do. They rode down in silence, got coffee from a machine that hummed too loudly, and stood in the fluorescent-lit hallway drinking from paper cups. The building felt different at night, stripped of pretense, just concrete and electric light and the hum of late-night janitors vacuuming distant floors. "You're good at your job," Min-Jae said suddenly. "Thank you, sir." "Don't call me sir when we're alone. It's exhausting." Amara smiled. "All right. How long have you been in Seoul?" 6 weeks. "What do you think?" She considered lying, saying something polite and professional. But his eyes held genuine curiosity. "It's lonely," she said honestly. but I'm getting used to it. He nodded slowly, something flickering across his face.
Yes.
I imagine you would be. They finished their coffee in comfortable silence. Row the elevator back up. Said good night in the hallway outside his office. Amara walked back to her desk thinking it was a strange, small moment that wouldn't repeat. But it did. The next week, it happened again. And the week after. Always around 11. Always brief. Coffee, a few words, silence that felt comfortable rather than awkward. The kind of silence people share when they're both too tired to perform. Then the text started. Min-Jae, still at your desk? Amara, almost done. Min-Jae, coffee on 12? Amara stared at her phone, her heart doing something strange and unprofessional. She typed back a simple yes and grabbed her ID badge. The 12th floor became their unspoken meeting place. Sometimes they talked about work, translation challenges, upcoming projects, office politics. Other times they said nothing, just stood by the window watching Seoul's lights blink like distant stars. Amara finally finished the legal translations. Min-Jae, at this hour? You should sleep. Amara, you're awake too. Min-Jae, touché. It wasn't romantic, Amara told herself repeatedly. It was just two people working too hard, finding comfort in shared exhaustion. Min-Jae never flirted, never crossed lines. He was respectful, professional, distant even. Except for those small moments when his guard dropped and she glimpsed something underneath, someone tired of pretending, of being Director Lee, of living a life that looked perfect from the outside but felt hollow within. Do you miss Lagos? He asked one night, both of them leaning against the window, the Han River snaking through the city below like a ribbon of light. Every day, Amara said. The noise, the chaos, my mother's jollof rice. But I can't go back. Not yet. Family needs you. Yes. She paused. That's a heavy thing to carry. You say that like you know. His expression shifted, something dark passing behind his eyes like a cloud over the sun. We all carry something. Amara wanted to ask what he carried, what made him stay at the office until midnight, what drove him beyond normal ambition. But she didn't. Some silences were meant to stay unbroken. Seo Park arrived on a Tuesday morning like a storm dressed in designer clothes. Amara first saw her in the elevator, tall, elegant, speaking rapid Korean into her phone with the confidence of someone who'd never questioned their place in the world. She noticed Amara briefly, offered a polite smile, then returned to her conversation. By lunch, everyone knew who she was. That's the new PR director. Amara's cubicle neighbor whispered, leaning over the divider. Seoul National University, Harvard MBA, 5 years at the top consulting firm in Korea. She seems qualified, Amara said neutrally.
Oh, she is.
But that's not the interesting part. The neighbor leaned closer. She's Director Lee's ex-girlfriend. They dated for 3 years. Ended 2 years ago. Nobody knows why. But now she's back. Amara's coffee suddenly tasted like ash. She told herself it didn't matter. Whatever she and Min-Jae had, those late-night coffees, those brief texts, wasn't real. It was proximity and exhaustion creating the illusion of connection. Seojin's return changed nothing. Except it changed everything. Min-Jae stopped texting. Stopped staying late. When Amara saw him in meetings, he was cordial but distant, his eyes skating past her as if she were furniture. The warmth she'd imagined, or maybe hadn't imagined, vanished like morning frost. Seojin, meanwhile, was everywhere. Charming executives, reorganizing departments, making HanSeong's public image her personal mission. And always somehow near Min-Jae, touching his arm in meetings, laughing at his rare attempts at humor, reminding everyone they had history, chemistry, belonging. You're the translator, right? Seojin appeared at Amara's desk one afternoon, her smile warm but her eyes calculating. Amara Johnson? Yes. I've heard good things. You corrected that presentation error a few months back. Impressive instincts. Just doing my job. Seojin perched on the edge of Amara's desk, casual but territorial. You work late a lot, I've noticed. Very dedicated. When necessary. And you're often near Director Lee during those late hours? There it was. The real question hidden beneath professional courtesy. Amara met Seo Jin's gaze steadily. We've collaborated on several projects. Of course. Seo Jin's smile didn't waver. Min-Jae has always been generous with his time, especially with people who need guidance. The emphasis on need guidance landed like a slap. As if Amara were a charity case, a project, someone Min-Jae helped out of obligation rather than respect. He's an excellent director, Amara said carefully. The best. Seo Jin stood, smoothing her skirt. Well, I should let you work. But, Amara, if you ever need advice navigating HanSeong's culture, let me know. It can be overwhelming for newcomers, especially international staff who might not understand Korean workplace dynamics. She walked away before Amara could respond, her heels clicking against the tile like a countdown. That night, sitting in her apartment with instant ramen growing cold in front of her, Amara replayed the conversation, especially international staff. The words felt like a door closing, a reminder that no matter how hard she worked, she would always be the outsider, the one who didn't quite fit, the diversity hire who'd gotten lucky once, but shouldn't expect it to last. Her phone buzzed. Min-Jae, are you all right? She stared at the message. They hadn't texted in 2 weeks. Why now? Amara, fine.
Why?
Min-Jae, Seo Jin mentioned talking to you today. Amara, she was friendly. Min-Jae, she usually is. Amara waited for more, but nothing came. She typed several responses, deleted them all, finally settled on. Amara, you don't have to check on me. Min-Jae, I know. Min-Jae, but I wanted to. She stared at those 4 words until her screen went dark. The rumors started the next day. Small things at first, whispers near the copy machine, raised eyebrows when Amara entered the break room. Then her supervisor called her in. There's been talk, he said, not meeting her eyes. About you and Director Lee. Amara's stomach dropped. Talk. People have noticed you two working closely together. Some think it's... He trailed off, uncomfortable. Inappropriate. Amara finished. I'm not saying it is. But in Korean corporate culture, appearances matter as much as reality. Maybe keep more distance. For your own reputation. Amara left his office feeling sick. She'd done nothing wrong. Nothing except work hard, stay late, drink coffee with someone who treated her like a colleague instead of a checkbox on a diversity form. But apparently even that was too much. When people can't read your story, she thought bitterly, they'll rewrite it for you. The sabotage came 2 weeks later, elegant in its simplicity. Amara had spent 3 days preparing translations for a major presentation, a Korean renewable energy company courting German investors. Every technical term had been verified, every phrase calibrated for precision. She'd emailed the final document to her supervisor Friday evening, then gone home exhausted but proud. Monday morning, her supervisor's voice on the phone was ice. My office.
Now.
The German investors had received the presentation over the weekend. The translation was catastrophically wrong, technical terms mistranslated, tone completely off, entire paragraphs missing. The investors had called it unprofessional and concerning. The deal was in jeopardy. This has your name on it, her supervisor said, sliding a printed document across his desk. Amara's hands shook as she read it. This isn't my file. I didn't write this. It came from your email.
No.
I sent a completely different version. Someone must have switched. Are you suggesting someone sabotaged you? His tone made it clear how ridiculous he found the idea. I'm saying this isn't my work. Check my computer. The original file will be there. But when IT checked, the original was gone, replaced by the flawed version. Her browsing history showed she'd accessed the file Saturday morning, which was impossible because she'd been at home all weekend, too exhausted to even open her laptop. Miss Johnson, her supervisor said quietly, this is serious. We're suspending you pending a full investigation. But I didn't. Effective immediately. Please collect your personal items and leave the building. Amara walked out of HanSeong at 10 in the morning, carrying only her purse. The security guard avoided her eyes. The receptionist whispered into her phone as she passed. Outside, Seoul was bright and busy, indifferent to her catastrophe. She walked for hours, her mind looping through impossible scenarios. Who would do this?
Why? How?
But she already knew. She just didn't want to believe it. That evening, she sat in her apartment staring at her phone. Her mother had texted asking how work was going. Her younger brother needed money for textbooks. The rent was due in 5 days. She opened her banking app, transferred most of her remaining savings to Lagos, because even if her world was collapsing, her family still needed to eat, then put her head in her hands and let herself break. Rain came around midnight. Amara pulled on a jacket and walked to the convenience store down the street, bought a coffee she couldn't afford, and sat on the plastic chairs outside under the awning, watching water stream off Seoul's neon signs. Amara. She looked up. Min-Jae stood there in jeans and a damp hoodie, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. No suit, no armor, just a man standing in the rain. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I heard what happened. I've been calling you." "I turned my phone off." He sat down beside her, close enough that she could feel warmth radiating from him, far enough to maintain the distance. Seoul demanded. "Tell me what really happened."
So she did.
All of it. The perfect file she'd submitted, the corrupted version that appeared, the impossible browsing history. Her voice stayed steady until she reached the part about her family, about sending money home while her career imploded. Then it cracked. "I did everything right," she whispered. "I worked harder than anyone. I was so careful. And it still wasn't enough. This wasn't your fault." "Then whose was it?" She looked at him. "We both know." Min-Jae's jaw tightened. "I have suspicions, but without proof." Seojin. He didn't deny it, just stared at the rain falling like a curtain between them and the rest of the world. "Why does she hate me?" Amara asked. "I never did anything to her." "Because I notice you." His voice was quiet but certain. "Because when we talk, I'm not performing. Because you make me remember what it's like to be myself instead of Director Lee." Amara turned to look at him. Really look at him. His profile was sharp against the convenience store lights, his expression raw in a way she'd never seen. The armor he wore so carefully at HanSeong had cracked, and underneath was someone lonely and tired and achingly real. "Min-Jae. You should have called me," he said, his voice rough. "When it happened, you should have called." "And say what? That I lost the only thing I had? That I failed?" Her voice broke. "I send money home every month. My mother depends on me. My brothers depend on me. And I just lost it all because someone decided I didn't belong." The rain fell harder. Thunder rumbled in the distance. "You didn't lose everything," Min-Jae said quietly. He turned to face her, and something in his eyes made her breath catch. "You didn't lose me." Then, slowly, carefully, as if asking permission, he pulled her into a hug.
It wasn't romantic.
Wasn't passionate or desperate or any of the things movies made embraces seem. It was just two people who'd both forgotten how to ask for help, finding shelter in each other for one fragile moment. Amara pressed her face into his shoulder and let herself breathe, really breathe, for the first time in weeks. She didn't see the phone camera flash across the street, didn't notice the figure behind the parked car, capturing their moment of mercy and turning it into ammunition. The photo appeared 3 days later. Amara woke to 19 missed calls. Opened her phone to find the image everywhere, on gossip sites, Korean forums, even legitimate news outlets. The headline variations were all brutal. HanSeong director embraces suspended employee, corruption scandal? Director Lee's secret relationship exposed. Inappropriate conduct at Korea's top company. The photo itself was damning. Min-Jae holding her outside the convenience store, Amara's face buried in his chest, the intimate privacy of the moment violated and reframed as proof of impropriety. Someone had even circled them in red, added arrows, made it look sordid and calculated.
Her phone rang.
Her mother. "Amara, what is this?" "Someone sent me a link. Are you in trouble?" "Mama, I can explain. It says you were fired. It says you're involved with your boss." Amara, what's happening? It's just a misunderstanding. I promise. Don't worry. How can I not worry?
Come home.
Just come home. I can't. Amara's voice cracked. Not yet. I'll fix this. I promise. But her mother worried anyway. Her brothers sent confused texts. And in Seoul, the story exploded like a bomb. HanSeong's stock dipped 3%. Shareholders demanded explanations. Conservative media called it evidence of declining corporate ethics. Progressive outlets debated workplace harassment and power dynamics. Everyone had opinions. Nobody asked Amara or Min-Jae for the truth. Seo-jin gave a carefully worded statement to the press, her face the picture of professional concern. As PR director, I'm committed to transparency and integrity at HanSeong. We take all allegations seriously and are conducting a thorough internal review. She looked sympathetic, responsible, concerned, the perfect mask hiding satisfaction underneath. That afternoon, Amara received a formal summons to appear before the board. Min-Jae received the same. In her apartment, Amara stared at the letter. This was it. The reckoning she'd been dreading since the moment she'd stepped off the plane in Seoul. She would lose everything. Her job, her reputation, her ability to support her family. And Min-Jae would lose whatever he'd been building all these years. She thought about that night at the convenience store, the way he'd said, "You didn't lose me." What had he meant? What did he have that was worth protecting? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You should leave Seoul. This won't end well for you." Amara deleted it, her hands shaking. Then she opened her contacts and called Min-Jae. He answered immediately. "Are you all right?" "No," she said honestly. "Are you?" A pause.
No.
"What are we going to do?" "I don't know yet." He sounded tired.
Defeated.
"Can you come to my apartment?"
We need to talk.
Really talk. Min-Jae's apartment was in Gangnam, all minimalist furniture and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Han River. But it was the wall that made Amara stop in her tracks, covered in papers, photographs, documents connected by red string like something from a crime thriller. "What is all this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Min-Jae stood in the center of the room, hands in his pockets, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. "The reason I joined HanSeong." He told her everything then. About his father, a brilliant HanSeong executive who'd been dedicated, honest, respected. About the false embezzlement charges 23 years ago, planted evidence, a conspiracy among board members who wanted his father's position for their own allies. About his father's forced resignation, the shame that followed, his slow decline into depression and death when Min-Jae was 15. "I was just a kid," Min-Jae said, his voice hollow. "But I understood betrayal. I understood that good people suffer while corrupt people prosper. So, I made a plan." He'd studied obsessively, graduated top of his class, joined HanSeong not to build a career but to systematically gather evidence against the men who destroyed his father. For 10 years, he'd worked 18-hour days, earning their trust while documenting their crimes, financial manipulation, illegal lobbying, insider trading, corporate espionage. "I'm close," he said, gesturing to the wall of evidence. "Maybe 2 or 3 months from having everything I need. Then I expose them. Destroy their careers the way they destroyed my father's. Give him the justice he never got." Amara stared at the wall. Years of pain and planning crystallized in documents and photographs. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because the scandal changes everything." He ran a hand through his hair, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked lost. "If I defend you tomorrow, they'll investigate me. Find this. End it before I'm ready. And if you don't defend me, they'll crucify you.
Deport you, probably.
Blacklist you from every company in Seoul." His voice broke. "I've built a decade around revenge. And one photo could undo it." So there it was. His mission or her future. Justice for his father or mercy for her. "What would your father want?" Amara asked quietly. Min-Jae flinched. "That's not fair. Neither is any of this." She moved closer. But Min-Jae, you've spent 10 years living for revenge. When do you start living for yourself? This is for myself. Is it? Or is it just another way to stay silent? Another way to protect yourself from feeling anything real? The words hung between them, sharp and true. Min-Jae looked at her, and she saw everything in his eyes. Fear, longing, the weight of carrying ghosts for so long he'd forgotten how to put them down. Then choose what's worth saving, Amara said softly. Your father's justice or your silence. Min-Jae opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the wall of evidence, then back at her. In 10 years, when it's done and those men are ruined and your father's name is cleared, Amara continued, will you be happy? The question seemed to break something in him. He sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. I don't know, he whispered. I don't know anymore. Amara sat beside him, close but not touching. Then maybe it's time to figure out what you're actually fighting for. They sat in silence as Seoul glittered beyond the windows. Millions of lives, millions of stories, all of them intersecting and diverging in ways none of them could predict. The boardroom smelled the same as it had 3 months ago when this all began, expensive cologne and cold judgment. But everything else had changed. Amara sat in the leather chair, hands folded in her lap, watching executives file in like a tribunal. Min-Jae sat 3 seats away, his face unreadable, his posture perfect. Seo-jin entered last, her expression professionally neutral, but Amara caught the flash of triumph in her eyes. Chairman Park took his seat at the head of the table. We're here to address serious allegations affecting HanSeong's reputation and integrity. He gestured to the screen behind him. The photograph appeared, Amara and Min-Jae outside the convenience store, their moment of human connection frozen and weaponized. Director Lee, Chairman Park said, each word deliberate. Are the rumors true? Have you engaged in an inappropriate relationship with Miss Johnson while she was under investigation? The room held its breath. Min-Jae sat perfectly still. Amara watched his profile, memorizing it. The sharp jaw, the careful posture, the armor he wore so well. She'd told him she would understand if he chose silence. She'd meant it. But God, she hoped he wouldn't. The seconds stretched. Someone coughed. Another executive shifted papers. The city beyond the windows continued its indifferent motion. Amara's heartbeat thundered in her ears. Her hands trembled slightly under the table. She thought about Lagos, about her family, about the future that suddenly felt both terrifying and impossible. She thought about Min-Jae's apartment wall, covered in years of pain and planning. She thought about how silence could be both protection and prison. He's lived his whole life holding his breath, she thought. But even the disciplined must exhale. Min-Jae's hands tightened on the armrests. His jaw worked as if he were chewing words too heavy to swallow. Then slowly he stood. Every eye in the room fixed on him. Excuse me, Chairman, Min-Jae said, his voice steady but strained. I need a moment. He walked toward the door, each step measured and deliberate. The room watched in stunned silence. He reached for the handle, paused for half a second as if reconsidering, then pulled the door open. It closed behind him with a low, echoing thud. Amara stared at the empty chair he'd left behind. Her breath caught in her throat. Around the table, executives murmured, confused. Chairman Park's face darkened. Seo-jin's satisfaction flickered into uncertainty. But Amara couldn't look at any of them, could only stare at that door, at the space where Min-Jae had been, at the choice he'd just made, or refused to make. Her lips parted, her chest tightened. The silence pressed down like a physical weight. Every truth begins with a breath, she thought, her heart racing. And I'm still holding mine. The clock on the wall ticked. Once.
Twice.
3 times. Nobody moved. Outside the boardroom, through the glass walls, souls sprawled endlessly. A city of millions, all holding their own breaths, all waiting for moments that would define them. And in that boardroom, Amara Johnson sat alone, surrounded by strangers, waiting to see if Min-Jae would return, and what truth he would bring with him. The screen still glowed with their photograph. The executives still stared. The question still hung in the air, unanswered. Amara closed her eyes and thought about mercy, about truth, about the difference between them. Then she opened her eyes and waited. To be continued. If you've made it this far, you just experienced something rare, a story that puts truth above endings, that values real emotion over easy answers. This is only part 1. Amara and Min-Jae's story isn't finished. Not even close. What happens when Min-Jae returns? Will he choose revenge or redemption? Will Amara's sacrifice be worth it? And what about Seojin? Does she get away with everything? Subscribe to this channel right now so you don't miss part 2. Hit that like button if this story made you feel something: anger, hope, frustration, anything real. And please, drop a comment telling me what you think Min-Jae should do. Should he stay silent? Should he expose everything? I read every single comment, and your voice matters. Part 2 drops soon. The reckoning has just begun, and nothing will be the same. Remember, every truth begins with a breath. Make yours count.